What is up, weirdos? Today we have an impromptu book review because I read a book this morning. Actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. I devoured a book this morning and it was so good. And I realized after I was done and I was like looking into the author and stuff that it's a new release. Like it released this morning and I read it this morning and I have so much to say about it. So let's get into it. As excited as I am to discuss this book with all of you and to get into this book review, there are unfortunately a lot of disclosures that we need to talk about before we can go any further. Number one being trigger warning. To anybody who is triggered by literally anything, this isn't going to be the one for you. Okay, this book has a lot of trigger warnings. I won't list them all out because there are just that many, but a heavy theme in this book was sexual assault, which I know is a pretty big trigger warning for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. So if that bothers you in any way, shape, or form, I unfortunately do not feel as though you should continue on with this review or even read the book, if I'm being honest. The assault does take a very heavy presence within the plot of the book and the overall overarching theme of the book. So if something like that really does weigh on your soul a little bit, I would not recommend this to you. As I'm hoping you're picking up by now, I love to give objective book reviews. And if you remember me from the I read 1,000 books in 2024 video, you would know that I love mafia romances. They are my favorite books to read, if I'm being honest. Like there's a part of me that was just so deeply wounded by Wattpad, and mafia romances scratch that itch so well for me personally. Everybody has their own personal vices and their own personal preferences. For me, it's mafia romances. So I am going to try to be as objective as possible for this book review. However, I will recognize that may not be possible because I have been known to give some mafia romances some pretty egregious ratings. So with all of that being said, let's get into this. Bad Bishop by L.J. Shen. Now, I'm gonna be honest, didn't read the title, didn't read the author, didn't really care. I literally searched it by, I have like a filter for mafia romances and this was number one. So added to cart, paid for it, and I was off on my merry way. I started this book before my 8 a.m. class and I finished it by 10 a.m. That was how entranced I was by this book. It was so good. So good. I loved it. You will very rarely hear me say that, but I loved this thing. It was so good. It was so good. I'm going to talk about it. We're going to dive deeper. And this, obviously, the it's so good part, that is me with very personal feelings saying that. This is not the objective portion of the review. This is just the Morgan Feelgood portion of the review. But I really like this book. And we'll dive deeper into the specifics of the characters, the overall character arcs, things like that. Complaints. I do have a couple of complaints, but they are very nitpicky. And yeah. Let's get into it. Now, I will be honest with you all. I honestly don't think I've ever read another L.J. Shen book before in my entire life. Now, I may be wrong. I do read a lot of books, so there is a huge possibility that she's written something in the past that I have read that I just don't remember. That may change. I'm gonna be honest with you. That may change because this did something for me. Just to give you a general synopsis of Bad Bishop, it follows our main couple of, I don't want to say his name wrong, Tiernan, Callahan, and Lila, who's the female main character. Now, Lila is a deaf mafia princess who is masquerading as somebody who is mentally challenged in order to kind of prevent herself from being married off. But unfortunately, one night Lila is assaulted by an unknown assailant and she becomes pregnant. And the book kind of picks up pace when Lila is put into this arranged marriage with Tiernan Callahan, the main male character, and the story will follow the two of them as they fall in love with each other. This is where the objective part is going to come into play. I, as a personal person who loves mafia books, loved this one. I will buy every single edition of this book that I can find in stores within the United States, and then probably some, because I loved this book a lot. I loved the characters, I loved Lila, I loved Tiernan, even though I can't say his freaking name. Like, I just loved it. But objectively, this book does have a couple of issues, and I feel like it would be remiss of me to not discuss those issues with all of you, despite how much I do genuinely love this book. Number one being the representation of Lila as somebody who is mentally challenged, and then the flip side to that coin being how she represents the deaf community. And what a lot of you may or may not know is that I was legally deaf as a child. And a mini kind of like theme with Lila, the main character throughout the book, is that she desperately wants to listen to music. Now, as somebody who went from like no hearing, little to no hearing, to being a hearing person, to somewhat losing their hearing as an adult, music is incredibly interesting to me because it means a lot to me now as an adult. And as a child, I remember not being able to watch cartoons or hear the radio in the car. And I just really identified with Lila on a personal level because of that. But that is an incredibly unique shared experience, and not all of you are going to have that. And I will say, as somebody who was once a part of the deaf community, I didn't love the representation of Lila all the way throughout the book, I'm gonna be honest. And I actually have a very similar issue with Alexis Hart, who is the female main character of Bonds and Blood of Hercules. Now, I will say LJ Shen did an incredible job with writing Lila as somebody who's hard of hearing, and I feel like that is one of my biggest problems with the Blood of Hercules, is I don't feel like Alexis represented the community half as well, and I just feel like it was poorly written in that sense. But again, that's my personal feelings, again, as somebody who was once a part of the community and will most likely be joining that community again soon. Like, if the main character in your book is hard of hearing, you should be able to at least somewhat describe their struggles within the book. And I just felt like a lot of Lila's struggles as somebody who was hard of hearing were trite. They were not at all accurate to how somebody who would be hard of hearing would operate within the world. I just found a lot of them to be incredibly trite and not at all fleshed out as I would have liked. She also did a pretty good job, because I can't tell if she had somebody that she consulted with or if she was just simply using the good old GPT to figure out everything. But towards the end, the female main character does get a set of cochlear implants. Now, I myself never got to a level where cochlears were discussed. I did have hearing aids that were provided to me by the state. But I did just find her description of the cochlear process. I do feel as though there is a very important disclaimer I need to put out for everybody. Cochlears do not just magically allow you to hear things. And that is one of my biggest problems with this book and with Lila as a character. When you are given a cochlear implant, you don't just magically like hear everything. That's not how it works. You don't even really hear a lot. You will have a robotic voice going on and echoing through your head that is describing to you the audio feedback that it is intaking. So you aren't hearing anything organic. You are simply having a computer process to you what is going around you. Different for everybody. There are different levels to the cochlear. There are different effects to the cochlear on everybody. But for a majority of my hard of hearing friends as kids, they basically just told me it was like a robot talking to them in their ear. That is what a cochlear implant is. And towards the end, we get this very deeply personal moment where Lila and her husband, Tiernan, are dancing, and she's like, oh, I can hear the music now. I have my cochlear implants. And that is just simply not how it works. So that did bother me a little bit, I'm going to be honest. But other than that, the representation I feel is fair. It's not perfect, but again, it's about as good as somebody who doesn't suffer from being hard of hearing is gonna get. And I'll give her props. She did much better than the Blood of Hercules. So for that, LJ gets her props. But for now, I'm gonna hop off of my soapbox about cochlears and hard of hearing people and deaf people. And we're gonna talk about the plot, the characters, the overall overarching theme. Now, sexual assault is one of the biggest motivators behind the storyline for Bad Bishop, and that being that Lila, the female main character, gets pregnant at the beginning of the book from being sexually assaulted. And it kind of becomes this really big driving factor throughout the book as her new husband, Tiernan, is kind of hell-bent on getting her revenge, as he should be. He is literally hunting for her assaulter, attacker, the entire book. Tiernan is very upset that Lila's not considering not getting the baby out. I just feel like it was so counterproductive of Tiernan's character development, going from being like this giant douchebag to being like somewhat of a softie by the end, to be completely against Lila having this baby for the entire book. Like literally up until the point that the baby, up until the point where she gives birth to the baby, he is telling her to get rid of it. He does not like the baby. He does not want her to have the baby. He wants her to get rid of it. And he makes this very well known. It is a point of contention between the two of them at the very beginning stages of their relationship. And they just kind of come to this ceasefire moment where they're like, she's like, I'm having the baby. Get over it. And then they just kind of leave it alone after that. But he's still just a massive jerk about her having the baby. And last 4 chapters of the book, she has the baby. And as soon as he sees it, he's like, my son, because it's a boy. And he's like, my baby boy, my son. And I just find that to be incredibly unrealistic, kind of problematic, and not a very good representation of Tiernan's character growth as a whole. I feel like that could have been better written. It could have been better drawn out. There could have been more development there. I feel like if they had actually sat down and had a conversation, Lila and Tiernan had actually had like a genuine conversation about the issues that they were having, it would have been so much more productive for them as characters. It would have showed their development from the beginning of the story to the end. It would have showed their character growth, their relationship growth. It just would have been, it would have made it a better book. Genuinely, it would have made this story, it would have taken it from amazing to like couldn't be touched, top tier, god tier book. And the only other thing that I have to add is that almost all of my complaints about this book are things that a normal person who just picks up a book off of a shelf and reads would not actually consider. And as somebody who was once a part of the deaf community, if that's what we're calling it now, a lot of my issues with Lila as a main character are because I have that background, I have that experience, I know what it's like, and it's different for me than it is going to be for like 99% of you. So, with all of that being said, I genuinely liked it. I will continue reading this series as more of them get published. I am super excited to see what Achilles and Tierney's story looks like in the future. If you really want a nice good old mafia romance, if Wattpad left a mafia-shaped hole in your heart, this will fill it for the time being. But yeah. Other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this impromptu book review, but this book was simply so good that I could not pass up the opportunity to yap about it with all of you guys. And other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Do you like this book? Do you think you'll pick it up? Or do you have any other recommendations for me? But other than that, I love you guys. Bye.